I'm Connor Roll, this is Old Oscar Countdown, and today we're going to be looking at the Best Adapted Screenplay category. This is going to be an interesting one because it's such a wide open race, and I can't wait to dig into it. But first, if you're new to the series, what I do every single week is I break down a new category for the 2018 Oscars, and I guess my predictions. Right now we're doing for the nominations, but once the nominations come out, we're going to start seeing that, we're going to see what I think is going to win once the nominations get announced. So I'm going to do the entire sort of span of things, but not in the next couple of weeks, but you'll see in about a month from now, I'll start grouping things up. So something like production design, costume design, things that make sense, I think, will come together in one category for one video, just because some of those can't necessarily sustain their own videos, and because, you sort of run out of time, and I could have done one every single week or whatever, but I would have to start in August, and that would have been unfair when we really had no idea. It would have been sort of off basis. But speaking of being off basis, some of my Best Picture nominees and some of my earlier videos were all the way back in October. Now, that may only seem like a couple months ago, but in the Oscar race season, that's a big deal. So to keep you guys updated, what I do every single week is I do Connor's Corner, which is a new thing different this year than last year, which I essentially just keep you updated on the Oscar race, which movies are rising and which movies are falling. So Rising, I went with Coco. This came out, did really well at the box office. People really liked it. And actually Pixar's record, which we'll be talking about next video for Best Animated Feature Film, is really interesting in terms of the Oscars. They do really well. So if they like it, this I think right now is a lock in the animated category. Coco, because it's doing well, especially box office wise in China and things like that. And it's got that international appeal. So I think it's going to do really well overall. So that's sort of movie that's rising, so keep an eye on Coco. Falling, I went with Novitiate just because Melissa Leo is the only member of that movie that's getting any sort of Oscar love, and right now I think I got her out of the top 5 just because the movie is so small, so minute, and I think it's really just falling off the map because it's not getting into the category, so it's getting harder for Melissa Leo to get recognized for that movie, and it's just something I think that'll go over a lot of people's heads, not in terms of the movie, but in terms of people just not watching it really. Okay, now let's move over into my first pick, which is Call Me By Your Name, James Ivory. This is as good as a lock as it's going to be. In the Golden Globes video, I was predicting Call Me By Your Name, maybe even a possible win. I predicted it to get nominated for the Golden Globes, but I also predicted it to get a possible win for Call Me By Your Name, because this year the Oscars are very divided. It's mostly heavily leaning to Best Original Screenplay and Adapted Screenplay. The race is wide open in terms of nominations. That's why I'm really excited to do this video. But in terms of winning, I don't really like to do winning in these types of videos, but I think this is going to win. If anything, this is a lock just because it is most likely a Best Picture nominee. James Ivory is adapting this book that's really well loved, and people thought it was done with really a lot of care. And James Ivory is also a filmmaker himself, so he has respect in that industry. And I think right now, if you're looking for a lock, just because of the fact that it's a Best Picture nominee and it's really well received, or going to be a Best Picture nominee, we don't know. And sort of early telltale signs, I think Call Me By Your Name for Adapted Screenplay is going to be a lock for a nomination for sure. All right, Dee Reed and Virgil Williams for Mudbound. Now, when I saw this movie, I enjoyed the movie overall, but one of the drawbacks to it, which was also sort of a benefit to it in a weird way, was its screenplay, the way it told its story, because when I was watching the movie, from the beginning, I almost knew that this was a book. I didn't know it was adapted off the book. I had no idea. But when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh yeah, this seems like a book. You have things like multiple narration. So there's multiple narrations with multiple narrators, different characters and whatnot. It also has this very sort of lyrical feel to it. So now, it sort of took me out of it because it didn't feel cinematic. The Oscars do like this sort of thing. Take a look at Fences. Got nominated for what was essentially a play on screen. This is sort of almost like a book on screen. Now this seemingly is a good book. Mudbound is a potential Oscar contender. if you include this nomination and maybe a couple others, Mudbound could get like 3-4 nominations to sort of surprise people. So that's going to be an interesting one. And I think that Dee Ree, I used to have her in director slot. Now I'm going to keep her in the out of that conversation and instead put her into adapted screenplay. I think this is where they're going to sort of recognize her and her sort of great view of this sort of interesting story, which, I mean, that's the reason why I went to saw it at Toronto International Film Festival, because I've heard great things and because of just this really interesting story that I think Dee Ree and Virgil Williams were able to adapt and then make it their own. And then my next pick is The Disaster Artist, Michael Neustadter and Michael H. Weber. So this is maybe a 5th or a 4th slot in another year because, like, oh, The Disaster Artist is this weird sort of indie type box office hit that is about a movie about the worst movie of all time, and James Franco and Seth Rogen are in it. What? Like, oh, this is not an Oscar movie, but in this year, especially in the adapted screenplay category, this is very much an Oscar movie. Things like just what I love about this movie, and I've seen it, it's a really amazing movie, really, I really enjoyed it, is because it takes The Room, which is this cult classic, a movie, it's the worst movie of all time, and it makes you sympathize with it in a different way than I didn't expect. It was easy to make a spoof film and to sort of criticize it and make fun of it, but they didn't do that. What they did was create this movie that was just like a very heartwarming movie about the story of these guys who just wanted to make a movie and put all of their heart in it. And I think that's where the writer sort of found the humanity in this, and James Franco was able to portray Tommy Wiseau beautifully and direct it. But in regards to the screenplay, just having that, of course, great funny lines and great funny scenes and sort of the smartness of the jokes, but you also have that inspirational, surprising, I think for a lot of people, inspirational, heartfelt message. And for the sort of smallish budget that they're doing, they're putting on a pretty big awards contender rush, especially for guys like James Franco for best actor, actually. But I think, if anything, Disaster Artist, which is a great book, people really love the book. I think that they sort of respect this and the craziness that is this movie, and just treating it with respect. And I think adaptations, for adapted screenplays, if you're treating the adaptation with respect and you do a good job adapting it to screen, people will nominate you. That's tough to say for that. Next pick, Molly's Game, Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin is the incredible writer for A Few Good Men and Steve Jobs and The Social Network and Moneyball. He's been nominated a few times before. But he wasn't nominated at the Oscars despite winning the Golden Globes for Steve Jobs. And that's the Golden Globes. They don't really measure anything, but it was actually also nominated at the WGA, the Writers Guild, which is sort of a big cursor to the Oscar nominations for the writing categories. But that was the last movie for Steve Jobs. This is different from Molly's Game. This one has nowhere as near as amount of sort of support behind that. That had Michael Fassbender and Kate Winslet in the acting roles. This one has possibly Jessica Chastain, but people are saying, nah, it's Margot Robbie for I, Tonya. We'll see about that. But I think it's just Aaron Sorkin, what you know about him is his dialogue. It's one of the most easily recognizable dialogues in the world. That and him and Quentin Tarantino or Noah Baumbach are really up there. But I think Aaron Sorkin is really sort of impressive, where he uses language in a rhythmic style like music to sort of weave in out the story. There's heavy narration in this movie by Jessica Chastain, but used to great effect. And just that smart, it's really the walk and talk style is what they sort of call it, because they're walking, they're talking, and it's smart and it's quippy, and it's almost like what you wish dialogue could be in real life, but it's not. But it's this heightened version for dramatic effect, and it works brilliantly. And Aaron Sorkin, this is his directing debut, but I think he's going to get nominated for adapted screenplay because this sort of is maybe a weaker year, but still, I'm pretty sure a lot of people really like Molly's Game, and the screenplay is a highlight of it. Now for my next pick, which may surprise you, Alan Heinberg for Wonder Woman. Now, this and my next pick, which, I might as well just get to now, my next possible, Logan for James Mangold, Scott Frank, and Michael Green. These two are almost tied for that 5th slot. I'm going with Wonder Woman just because it was a big summer blockbuster success. But why a comic book movie? Well, like I said, this category is wide open. I think Wonder Woman has a possibility to get in for Best Picture. And look at Deadpool last year, right? It got nominated for PGAs and it got nominated for WGAs. It got nominated for Writers Guild over some of the other Best Picture nominees. I think if like Fences or Hidden Figures, we'll say, just didn't exist and wasn't a Best Picture nominee, Deadpool's a for sure lock in for Best Adapted Screenplay. So if the Oscars are really trying to do what they're saying, really trying to acknowledge a comic book movie, I feel like they've been wanting to acknowledge a comic book movie. I think Wonder Woman is that movie sort of in this, having this great inspirational female-led story, big box office success. It looks good on the Oscars. The only thing I would say for Logan is that it's sort of a more serious movie. It's a great send-off for a character that they didn't realize they loved in Hugh Jackman for X-Men. So that's an interesting sort of little piece of the pie. So I think comic book movies, watch out, this could be it. So Logan's my second possible. And then my final is Wonder. Finally, I was thinking like this final slot's either going to go to one of the Wonders. Wonder Woman, Wonderstruck, or Wonder. Now this is a huge box office surprise hit. It's striking to do 150 million. Stephen Chbosky, who actually directed the movie, also wrote and directed Perks of Being a Wallflower. Perks of Being a Wallflower. So he has a lot of, which is also based on a book. So he has a lot of credit and cred in the adapted screenplay world. So I think people respect him on that. Plus, it's a surprising movie. You think it's going to be a heartfelt movie. You think it's going to be sort of like a really sad, depressing movie, sort of like, oh, this poor kid. But it's really a heartful movie. It changes your expectations. It's a lot better than something like the trailers perceived to be. And it was a big hit and sort of has good word of the mouth, I think. So if anything, this is maybe the more logical sense. But I think that Wonder Woman and that comic book argument, I haven't been hearing it, but you hear it first on Old Oscar Countdown by Connor Old. That's me. Make sure you like the video, comment below, and let me know what are your picks. Which adapted screenplay would you like to see get in this year? Is Call Me by Your Name a win? I think so. I think it's a lock and a win. But let me know in the comments down below. I'm Connor Old, and until next time, stay tuned.